Hey folks, welcome to the introduction of my very first video cast. I'm so excited about this. I'm excited to get started. I've got my studio set up here in my garage. I've got all my equipment, and I'm starting to line up my first list of guests. I plan to launch it this week or next, depending. But I'm looking forward to it. So sit down, relax. I'm your punk theologian, and you are at the edge of the roof. So, folks, welcome back. I'm really excited about my first video cast. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, why I would even want to do this. And so I did a lot of research on how to do a podcast and then how to do a video cast. And I spent a lot of time thinking about, well, do I want to invest my time in this? What's the point? What's the purpose? Will anybody care? Is there an audience out there? And so I want to share today a little bit before I kick off the video cast next week. I want to share a little bit about the ground rules of why, what, and how this will all go down and what to expect in the coming weeks. And but basically what I want to say is this is coming from my heart, and this is coming from my own story. And this is coming from the notion that there are other people out there like me who may be going through some of the things that I go through. And so I'm going to invite those folks into the studio who have a story to tell, a narrative story to tell, because I fancy myself a storyteller, a digital storyteller. I like to listen to stories. I like to tell my story. And I think stories really carry wisdom and insight and inspiration, and they can really help liberate people, especially folks who may be searching, who may be wondering, who may be asking questions, those who may be living in silence. They hear someone else's story, it resonates with them, they can identify with that story, and it helps them begin their journey, whatever that journey might look like, whatever that journey might be. So, you heard me in the introduction declare myself as the punk theologian. That's what I go by. You can find me on Instagram at punk theologian on Instagram. And you also heard me refer to the title of this video cast, At the Edge of the Roof. And so that's going to be the working title. I'm not going to tell you where I got that title from. I'm going to let you guess. And if you can guess where that phrase comes from, and you put it in the comments, and the first one to guess will win a prize. At the Edge of the Roof. And the underlying theme, the underlying tag for the show At the Edge of the Roof will be faith, recovery, and rock and roll. Faith, recovery, and rock and roll, because all those three things are important. Primarily, I want to focus on recovery, but because a person's faith journey often is so much a part of that, I really want to include that in here. And because I am a pastor, I'll be right up front. I am an ordained clergy pastor within the denomination Christian Church Disciples of Christ. I need to be very upfront with that. Also, in my honesty, I will tell you that I'm a pastor who is in recovery. My drug of choice is alcohol. I suffer from extreme alcohol use disorder or substance use disorder. I also carry a mental illness disorder, which is bipolar, and so I take medication for that. I see a psychiatrist. I see a therapist. I have a recovery program that I'm in with a sponsor. So that's where I'm coming from. And I have colleagues, clergy colleagues, who hold me accountable, and a circle of support around me that helps me maintain my sanity in an often insane world. And so that's me right up front. So the crux of the show is going to be directed towards recovery and faith. The rock and roll portion of it is just because I find it really music very interesting. Music has been a part of my life as long as I can remember, from my sisters sitting in our home spinning my parents' vinyl, from anything from the Carpenters to the Beach Boys to Barbra Streisand to Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. All of that stuff got into my veins. Going to my grandparents' house and opening up their console record player and filing through their vinyl and finding Nat King Cole and Frank Sinatra and Oscar Peterson and Errol Garner, and all of that, really, that got into my veins as well. And so, every guest that comes on, I'm hoping to engage them in some bit of discussion about the music that really inspired them or influenced them when they were growing up. What influenced them growing up, and what is inspiring and influencing them today? So those kind of questions are really important to me. I love to talk about music and its importance and its connection to recovery and my faith journey. That is going to be the underlying theme of this entire video cast. It's going to be story based. So I'm going to have guests coming in, and they're basically going to be telling their stories, and I'm just going to be kind of stringing them along, interviewing them very lightly, and allowing them and pulling the story out of them as much as they're open and willing to, and just getting that on video, and allowing that, the wisdom that comes from that, to speak to my audience, and hopefully my audience will hear something that resonates with them. Most of the folks that I will bring in will be folks who are in recovery, presently in recovery, and who are on some sort of faith journey and who have a deep appreciation for music. The most important reason why I'm doing this, and I need to get this up and out right up front, is the fact that people are dying every day. And people are dying every day in silence. And I almost died in my silence at one point. And so the level of stigma that continues in society today, that traps people in shame, darkness, and silence, is extraordinary, is unthinkable, is unnecessary. And the amount of people who die every single day from alcohol and drug abuse, for reasons that really, didn't have to be. I mean, we hear so many stories in the news, and those are only the stories we hear, the ones that are elevated to the level of news sources, and they always catch us off guard. The other level of stories that we may hear are the ones that are close to us in the family or extended family or social media, right? But the countless others across the United States, young and old, rich and poor, dying from substance use disorder, alcohol use disorder. It's an epidemic in this country, and we have heard about the opioid epidemic ravaging our country, especially our young adults, our young folks, and the amount of death that this causes, and all of that, each death connected to a family, to a mother and a father, siblings, extended family, a faith community. And I say faith community because think about all the congregations across the United States and all the pastors who have to preach and pastor those congregations. Everyone sitting in a pew, sitting next to someone else. We know that if we consider national statistics, 1 in 4 folks have been affected by substance use disorder. And so we can't ignore the fact that within our congregations have been ravaged by addiction and by mental health issues. If it's a problem in society, then it's a problem in the church. It's a problem in the pews, and we can't ignore that. And so the purpose of this video cast is to, for me, first of all, wanting to be more vocal, wanting to be outspoken, wanting to speak truth to power, to be brutally honest with first my story, my disease, and then the stories of those who come on as guests. And hopefully, if we highlight those and bring that addiction that hides in the dark, that does push-ups in the dark, always getting worse, never better, always getting stronger, never weaker, if we can lure that addiction out into the light and expose it for what it is, bring it out, wrestle it from stigma, bring it out in the light, share it in the light of day, hopefully that will give courage and strength and hope to more people to speak their own story, the truth of their own story. And I really do believe that stories can liberate us. They can change us. Stories are powerful, you know that. That's all I'm going to say on that. What else do I want to say? Also, I think I'm going to be advocating, well, I know that part of this podcast will be advocating on behalf of a movement within the church, my own denomination, Christian Church Disciples of Christ. And I'm going to leave it at that. As a pastor, as a person who carries substance use disorder, alcohol use disorder, it is part of my call to share my story and to be concerned about advocating for the presence of addiction in the church, in our congregations, with our pastors. And not only that, but how we're dealing with it as a church, because in many ways I'm disappointed with the way in which the church is handling addiction. And just that's frankly speaking, you know. For ages the church has treated it as a moral failing, as a sin and a weakness and a lack of willpower. And if you will only turn and hand your life to Jesus, then that's all you need, and you'll be delivered from this moral failing, and you'll be cured, you'll be healed. All of that language, I think, is harmful. It really is harmful. And so I think there is much to say in the church today around addiction and mental health, but I want to say that primarily this videocast will address alcohol and substance use disorder. There may be times in which we cross over into mental health and mental health disorder, because in many ways the two are connected. And in my case, I am what you call dual diagnosed, so I deal with both things at the same time, my addiction and my mental health, and working on both sides to keep myself balanced. I hope that my guests and I will advocate for the correct policy and language spoken in the church, for creating spaces where people can share their story, feeling safe, advocating against stigma within the church, stigma against clergy, stigma against lay leaders, also equipping churches in how to deal with substance use disorder, what can you do to be outspoken, what can you do to counter stigma, and then to encourage congregations across the United States to be involved in creating some type of program within their congregation to address these issues. So some of the ground rules for the video cast: I'm going to try to have the best guests that I can. Very informative guests, very enthusiastic, entertaining folks who have wonderful stories, powerful stories, inspirational stories, just interesting people in general. I want the show to be insightful. I want it to be inspiring. I want it to be conversational. I want us to have I want there to be a sense of sacred storytelling, and I want it to be fun, and so we can joke around, and maybe we'll listen to some music. The format will generally be 30 minutes where I interview a guest or have a guest on. I plan to put out a video cast one one per week, and that's where I'm going to start. And also, what I want to say is this, that I'm not going to focus on perfection. This is not going to be perfect. You can already tell in this little intro snippet that I've got a lot to learn about speaking on camera. When we come in the studio, it's kind of be this organic conversation. So none of it's going to be perfect, and don't expect this to be perfect, but it will be organic. It will grow into something, and hopefully the most important thing, it will be honest. It will be raw. It will be from the heart. It will be passionate, but honesty, honesty, honesty. I think honesty is the only thing that can rid our society of stigma, right? And listening. So in closing, I'm really excited. I thank you. I'm going to put this intro out. I want you to listen to it, and I want you to give me some honest feedback, and because this is a learning curve for me, and any helpful information or feedback that you can give me, I take it with an open heart and an open mind. Just don't be negative, okay? Don't be a wet blanket, okay? Because I think this video cast will be important. And in fact, when I shared my story over the month of May via social media, I had so many people respond to me with like-minded stories, and so I know that there's a place for a video cast that speaks to the truth, sometimes the truth that other people are afraid to speak. Because I know there were plenty of times in my life when I was afraid to speak, when I didn't even know what was going on with me, so I didn't know how to speak about what was going on. And certainly many times when I was afraid to speak for fear of what people might think of me. Will it jeopardize my job? Will it jeopardize my standing with others? So I think there's a place for this. And since that time of me sharing for 30 days straight about my disease during the month of May, I've had plenty of people ask me whether I would do a podcast or video cast. So here it is. It's going to happen. I'm at 22 minutes and for this first intro video cast, so I'm going to sign off now. I'm going to try to create a very catchy intro and a catchy outro, and then I'm going to post it on YouTube. And comment, like, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever you want to do. Just keep it positive so that this can grow, and hopefully it will speak to you. Spread the word that it might speak to other people. And for now, I bid you adieu until the first episode. I am your punk theologian, and you are at the edge of the roof. Bye-bye.